This is the slide. Okay, thank you very much. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to talk to you about the Smart Villages initiative. And let me start off with an important bit of the context for why we're doing it, and some of these numbers have already been alluded to earlier by Stephen. So we have this absolutely important commitment by the United Nations to achieve universal energy access to electricity by 2030. The IEA, when it looked in its World Energy Outlook in 2011 how best to make those new connections in rural areas, concluded that something like 30% of those new connections could appropriately come from national grid extension, but the main part, some 70%, would appropriately come from micro or mini grids and home-based approaches. So the Smart Villages initiative is concentrating on that latter category of connections. And the idea is that energy can act as a catalyst for the development, enabling better provision of education in rural communities, the creation of new local businesses and ways of generating income, better health and welfare, being better able to engage with democratic processes and improved food security. And all of those things have been touched on already this morning. I need to say a little bit about the term smart villages. Much has been made in recent years of smart cities, very often positioned as being a kind of vision of the future, the engine room for economies and so on. But just under half of the world's population and some 70% of the world's poor live in rural villages. So to our mind, there's a pressing need for some analog in rural communities to the smart cities idea. The thought is that smart villages will be different depending on where you are and what your circumstances are and what your aspirations are, but they'll have some common features, all enabled by access to energy. So it would be possible in a smart village to get decent education and healthcare provided locally. Information and communication technologies will substantially increase the educational possibilities, enabling distance learning and access to the world's knowledge base. And modern health services will be enhanced by the ever-increasing possibilities that are coming through from low-cost diagnostics that can be applied locally, with telemedicine providing a connection to more specialised people and services that can then interpret that data and feedback and so on. In terms of democracy, ICT connectivity can enable that improved participation at local, regional and national levels, and can help to create smart communities with strong rural and urban linkages. The other thought is about fostering entrepreneurship, both in the provision of energy services and then being able to use that energy for productive enterprises, thereby capturing more of the agricultural value chain, but also enabling the creation of new businesses locally. And providing more of an option as SMEs are created to think about a rural location rather than necessarily an urban location. And then enabling the building of more resilient communities that are able to respond to shocks with clean water and sanitation and affordable and nutritious food. And the thought is that technology advances and game-changing technologies, together with an integrated approach to development, may shift the balance of opportunities between cities and villages. In industrialised countries, we're already seeing something of this, with some indications of a shift, with people, in some cases, moving back from cities to rural locations for a whole variety of reasons: lifestyle and family preferences, reduction in the information and communication and transportation barriers, or urban level amenities being available in rural villages, and new economic opportunities. So one of the things we want to look at through the Smart Villages initiative is how that might play out in developing countries over future years. Let me come back to say more now about the Smart Villages initiative itself. I've already spoken that our focus is on mini-grids and home-based approaches rather than through national grid extension. The aim is to provide advice to policymakers, to funders, to key stakeholders at national, regional and global levels as an insightful, I've called it a view from the front line of the challenges of village energy provision for development and how those challenges can be overcome. And at the core of the initiative will be a series of international workshops. And these will be held, 2 in each of Africa, Asia and Latin America over the next 3 years. And in each case, bringing together the key players, the people that are really involved in doing this for real. The scientists, the entrepreneurs, villages, NGOs, financiers, regulators, policymakers, and so on. A diverse group of people. And asking these questions, answering these questions hopefully, what are the barriers? How can we overcome those barriers? And what messages do we need to take back to the funders and the policymakers for what they need to do to enable village-level energy access? It's very much a partnership. The funding so far has been provided by 2 Cambridge-based charities, the Malaysian Commonwealth Studies Centre and the Cambridge Malaysian Education and Development Trust. We've recently got another tranche of money from an international charity. So we've got the money in place now to do the project for the next 3 years. Second key partner, ESAC, European Academy of Science Advisory Council. This is the body put together by the National Science Academies in Europe 12 years ago, specifically to provide advice to European policymakers, European Commission, European Parliament. Has already become quite an influential body to whom those European bodies turn to for scientific advice. We'll also be working with the local national science academies in the countries that we'll be working in, and their regional networks. So there's a network of science academies in Africa, one in Asia and another one in America. And then lastly, working with partners who have in-depth experience and expertise of village-level energy provision. So far, Practical Action and the Energy Resources Institute, Terry, both of whom are represented here. The precise architecture of the partnership will vary a little bit as we go through the various workshops. So in the first workshop that we've already run in Arusha in Tanzania a month ago, the specific local science academies there were from Tanzania and Kenya. The regional body there was NASAC, the Network of African Science Academies. And on this occasion, we had partners from Sweden. So the International Science Programme, the Swedish Secretariat for Environmental and Earth System Sciences, and KPA, the Swedish Science Academy. I think the thing I just want to sort of pick up on there is this involvement of the science academies, which we see as being quite important to us, because the science academies in many countries are looked to by government as a source of independent and authoritative advice, and they have very good links to the government policy-making bodies, so they should provide a very effective channel for us to get our advice fed into the policy community. Just to say a little bit about work to date, we've been through a preparatory phase over the last 2 years. One thing that we did that was published in January of last year was a scoping study which looked at village-level energy services in Tanzania, Ghana and India. That was carried out by a study team based at Oxford University, which really just tried to get our heads around what are the issues and what should be the appropriate focus for the main project which we've now started. We've also had a very extensive round of meetings over the last 18 months with the key bodies that we want to be able to provide advice to in due course and those that we want to be working with. And in all cases had a very positive response to the initiative and looking forward to working with us over the next 3 years. And then the last thing to mention here, back in January in Cambridge University, we had what we called a Forward Look workshop, and that was to look at the kind of developments that might still be at the laboratory stage in science and technology, but that could lead to game-changing technologies that will be available in 5, 10 or 20 years' time. And the intention is to continue to run a series of workshops with that sort of focus, concentrating on specific areas, both in terms of energy production, in terms of energy use, through the course of the project. The core, as I say, is this series of 6 in-country workshops. They'll all be based around this idea of bringing 50 or so key players together, diverse cross-section of people, to look at these issues of the barriers and how we can overcome them. What are the messages we need to take back? And in each case, the workshop will be based in a particular country, but will also have a regional focus. So the workshop in Tanzania a month ago had an East African focus. We moved to Malaysia in January of next year. That will look at Southeast Asia. Then on to India, that will look at neighbouring countries in South Asia. Towards the end of next year, Bolivia and South America. Back to Africa in 2016, to Ghana and West Africa, and then finally to Mexico and Central America towards the end of 2016. The intention is that we carry the learning forward from one workshop to the next, and as we go through this series of events, we're starting to build good connections north to south, south to south, and so on. After each workshop, we'll be running a 9 to 12 month programme of follow-up activities. That will very obviously include a workshop report and the dissemination of that report. The one from Arusha will be available in about 2 weeks' time, so I'm very happy to channel that through to you. And then working very closely with our local partners, particularly the science academies, we'll be preparing policy briefs and setting up briefing meetings with policymakers, funders and other key players. We'll be looking to run some training courses in the region to talk about the findings of the workshop, but also to continue to explore the implementation issues. In some countries, we're going to be running entrepreneurial competitions to try and identify the best new ideas that are coming through, and to work in some way with those best new ideas to help them make the next steps. And then a final event in each region to try and pull things together, to sit down with the key policy people and stakeholders and think about the way forward. Some additional activities. We have already prepared a draft of what we call the vision paper, intended to be an inspirational vision of smart villages that is anchored in the views of the people who come to the workshop. So it's going to be progressively developed as we run through the 6 workshops, and also act as a focusing mechanism for the workshop. So we come at the energy issue through the lens of what are we trying to achieve in terms of the creation of smart villages. A couple of things that have come out of a project that's just coming to an end on agriculture in Africa, a booklet of essays aimed at policymakers and a pocket guide for the media and tertiary students. Both of those have played out quite well in the Forerunner project on agriculture. The website, we want that to be a well-used website where we use it to continue to engage with the various people that are involved in the project. So I would encourage you to go and have a look. We'll be updating that very regularly with new material. And then towards the end of this 3-year period, we're going to be running 2 final workshops. One in Brussels, where we'll be looking to engage with the European policy community, and then the second one aimed at a more global level, so the UN, World Bank and so on, which probably will be in Addis Ababa. And the intention there is to bring key policy people together, policy people and funders, really to sort of collectively distill and promulgate the key messages from the initiative. So, a key aim is to identify the framework conditions that will foster entrepreneurial activities to deliver energy services and to set up the businesses that need that energy to work. But also the framework conditions that will maximise the leverage that we can get of public sector funding from the private sector. An underlying premise is that we need to, in order to maximise the social benefits and the development impact, we need to integrate energy access with other development initiatives, and we need to take a community-level approach. An important concern is to think about how we can catalyse the progression through the various levels of energy access to bring people up through that as quickly as possible. Two final slides just between you and lunch. And this is just to very briefly summarise some of the findings from the Arusha workshop. As I say, I'll let you have the workshop report in a couple of weeks' time. So just to recap, this was a workshop that brought together 60 people, a very diverse set of people that are involved in village-level energy development in East Africa. We had a very good workshop, very lively workshop. The model seemed to work well. So here's just a few thoughts that have come out of that. In terms of solar lights and solar home systems, it's already sort of come up this morning. They seem to have reached a tipping point where we're now seeing quite a rapid expansion on a commercial basis. But the point was made that that pace of rollout is being constrained by some issues around distribution networks, particularly getting out to remoter communities, and the difficulties that SMEs are having in terms of getting access to working capital to expand. So there's two bottlenecks there that we need to do something to try and unlock in order to continue up with this rapidly increasing pace of rollout. And something that was mentioned by two or three of the SMEs that are there pushing solar home systems. It's the energy escalator, where customers can pay off the below-level system and step up to the next level, a higher power system that brings in more appliances. And for example, the sewing machine, which can then be a source of income at the household level. In terms of mini-grids, already touched on this morning, the search continues for scalable business models. Often, at least for now, there's a continuing need for some level of government or donor support. A catch-22, we had a number of developers of mini-grids at the workshop. A catch-22 is that they can easily be charged 20% or more interest rates if they go and look for loans from banks, which tends to make projects uneconomic. If they could demonstrate a track record, they could get access to lower interest rates. So we've got a sort of chicken and egg situation. How do they get that track record? How do they get started on demonstrating their efficient operators? What also came out was kind of an interesting dynamic between mini-grids and home-based approaches. And I thought that perhaps initially, the mini-grids concentrate on the somewhat larger villages, perhaps providing the basis for where productive enterprises could then be created and be located, with home-based approaches, at least initially, providing a lower level of service to this more dispersed community that occupies a wide area around the village. So a kind of hub and spoke model in terms of actually getting started. On technologies, a number of things coming through the system that could offer the potential for breakthroughs in cost. Our Swedish colleagues talked about printable organic solar cells, so there's a number of things that really could start to make a difference. A view that we need improved control systems, we need more plug-and-play technologies, and a concern that the issue of recyclability and recycling hasn't been sufficiently thought about. and we need to start to do that now, otherwise we're going to create an environmental problem a little bit further down the road. And the need for more applied research, and this is research in the developing countries, that is better connecting the universities with the SMEs that might actually want to use that research. We need to integrate with other development initiatives. That's already been mentioned, but was confirmed by the workshop. And we need to think about how to enable those associated investments in productive enterprises, both at the community level and at the household level. And we need to think not just about enabling the creation of new enterprises, but also increasing the productivity of existing income-generating activities. A need for better collaboration. A point that came through very strongly, and this was that there's a confusion of funders and funding schemes. And sometimes funders seeming to be in competition with each other rather than to cooperate. So a view that we need some sort of better framework for cooperation in East African countries, and I guess Stephen's already to offer at least part of the answer to that this morning. And a view that we need to look beyond public-private partnerships to involve communities, and that point's been made by Tim and so on. So public-private community partnership, that community ownership and involvement is really important, especially for immigrants. Inevitably, the view that we need supportive policy and regulatory frameworks. There was a strong plea from the entrepreneurs at the workshop. Please, let's have less red tape and some breathing space in terms of tax regimes to let them get off the ground and get started. But we need to do more to nurture homegrown enterprises. So governments and donors need to do more in terms of business incubation and to do more in terms of advisory support services. The thought was that there is more value to be had in terms of sharing information and experiences. Across East African countries, there was, surprise expressed, oh, I didn't know that was happening in Kenya and so on. So there's a real value in better schemes for sharing experience. The thought that by working up some case studies of smart villages, that could act as a guide and inspiration for other villages that might want to embark on this route. And that governments and donors could usefully fund the creation of geographically based data sets of the potential for wind and hydro and solar. The kind of things that individual entrepreneurs can't afford to do, but is immensely valuable to them if they're available as a public resource. And then the last point was a need to develop better approaches to evaluate the development outcomes of energy access. A number of people spoke of the problems they're having when they go to a donor or they go to somebody that they want to get some funding from. They haven't got anything really to be able to show what are the development benefits. So I view that they really need some better systems that they can use to make that case to the people who are asking for it. So that was very briefly what came out of the workshop. Very happy to answer questions.
We'll have question session now for 4 presentations that we had in the morning. A few questions, then we'll go for lunch, and then we'll start the next session in the afternoon. So, any questions for any 4 of them? John can go and see, and then you can answer from there. Yeah, please do. Tell to whom the question is addressed.
Sure.
And short questions. Please.
I didn't introduce myself earlier when I asked questions. So Drono by there from IT Power. For Practical Action Team, you showed 2 different types of upgrade. One was multiple mini grids and isolated. I think you're trying to show that the multiple is better.